Live on our YouTube channels. Welcome into Night Moves. This episode is brought to you by our partners at Logos Bible Software. Logos combines digital books with intelligent software to help you study the Bible deeply. Do word studies with one click, search for virtually anything in our Bible, and enjoy dozens of features that help you see more in the scriptures. It's like having your personal Bible study research assistant. Click on the link in this episode description to get your copies of Logos 10. And disclaimer, I've been using Logos 10 for over 10 years. It's an awesome catalog that help you just elevate your game in theology, relationship, and doctrine. So check out Logos Bible Software. Get your copy. You will not regret it. I'm Michael. This is Night Moves HQ. Welcome into the episode. Going to have a fun conversation because I got a new friend of mine that I met last summer. And we're going to introduce you to Jenna Ditsch here shortly. It's going to be a riveting conversation. If you are in a situation or circumstance or crisis, I want you to understand this conversation of faith, how to keep your faith in the fire. And Jenna is another excellent believer who has gone through, and as we all do, go through the fire. And she's going to help share her story to help you. And at the end, you'll have an opportunity to connect with Jenna on her social media contacts. But here we go. We're in the lab. Get ready for another riveting conversation. I want to welcome all of the Night Eagles to you, Miss Jenna Ditsch. Hello, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you for having me on, Michael.
Well, I'm glad you're here. We've been texting back and forth over the couple months, and she's actually like a hub, another hub in the kingdom. She's a connector and a very spiritual person here that I believe God has connected me to. And you know, I got your copy of that first revelation that you shared with me. I'm not sure if we'll get into it today, but you know, your story and how God is using you is not just profound, but I believe it's strategic for such a time as this, Jenna. And so we'll talk about that. But as we get into all this, get to share a little bit about who you are. Who is Miss Jenna Ditsch? And welcome to the show again.
Thank you. So, who am I? 5 minutes or less. No. So, I'm a lot of things. I'm a mom. I'm a single mom.
Mhm.
Um, that was a surprise of my life. Um, I am also a teacher, a director of a school. I'm a writer. I am a coffee connoisseur. Most importantly, I am a child of God, and I am on an adventure with Him, a very unexpected adventure through many ups and downs. But I am one who really just pursues wisdom and wants to live this life for the purpose that God put me here. So I've been learning how to take all of the things I used to try to run away from, i.e., trials, James 1, and actually said, oh, there's actually purpose in this. So I'm just along for an adventure where I no longer know what's coming next. I just know that if I follow God, it will turn out for good.
It's a lot packed in there. I mean, there's a lot packed in there. You gave me some ideas for the last segment of this episode here. Um, Trial by fire. And we all go through trials, and some of these trials come by fire. And as I'm unpacking what you just said, you know, you guys, you're listening to and watching this on the video side because we're actually live on our YouTube channels at this present time. I want you to not take the awkwardness of when I'm just being quiet and see, because there's a bridge, and that means something profound. Jenna has made us aware too, and she does say some profound things. I've seen the images, I got the receipts, but trial by fire. I didn't send this over to you, but there's so many in the fire of God. There's so many in the fire in the world, right?
Mhm.
How do these trials create better faith? You know what I'm saying? How do these
Yeah.
trials create a better faith? and from your vantage point?
Well, you know, I'm in this like interesting place where the worst things that have happened in my life, and they've all happened in the last 6 years, and they all happen within a matter of a few weeks, um, are the trials of my life. And I'm thankful for them because I would not be who I am, where I am, or have the intimacy with Jesus that I now have without them. So it's this great and where my flesh says, I did not enjoy that. And my spirit says, thank you, God, that was necessary for me. I can elaborate on what some of those trials were if you'd like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're okay, let me know where we don't go. We don't want to cross bridges we don't want to cross.
Yeah. Yeah. So in 2019, I was a mom of 2 little babies. That itself is a trial, right? Like all of a sudden you're not sleeping, and you have to keep these humans alive, and you don't even need a license to take the baby home from the hospital. They just give it to you. So I'm in, new mom world. My kids at this time were 2 and 4, and my at the time husband left his birthday, and he did not return. And I found myself suddenly overnight a single mom. And my world just began to crash from that point forward because the enemy did not have grace for me. The enemy did not say, oh, Jenna's going through a hard thing. Let's just sit back and leave her alone. That was the year that he said, okay, take her out. Like, let's throw everything we have at her. So I find myself as a new mom, single mom, then losing my job, and then losing my house because I had lost my job. I had family across the state. My parents had just closed on a house halfway across the nation on the very same day that my ex-husband left. And my grandma died, who was my closest human. And there was tangible spiritual warfare, unlike anything I had ever experienced during that time as well. So that all just happened within a matter of weeks. And so when I say trial, literally the life I had as I knew it systematically collapsed.
In that fire, were there signals? I mean, there are never. Well, I shouldn't say there's never. There's few signals when death occurs. Maybe health risk or something going on that level. Were there signals that you missed looking back, or were you just unaware? Or was it like a shocker to that degree with the ex-husband there? And I'm only asking because of others going through similar situations.
Yeah, I feel like in retrospect, symbols are very clear. And when you're in the moment, they're easy to miss. And so I would say that's what it was like for me. I had a sense on the day he left, I could feel inside my spirit. I felt very, very, very troubled. I felt like something was not right. And I asked him not to leave, not to go out of town, because I didn't know when he was leaving that he would not be returning. And so I could definitely feel something is off. I just had no idea what kind of a ride I was in for.
Mm-hmm. The emotional pain, obviously, I've been through something like that as well. And literally, what year are we in? 25? For myself, being one who understands a little bit of what you're talking about, father brought my wife back 23. Yeah, 23. She left on our 15-year-old birthday in January. And then 4.5 months later, I was at my wit's end in the forest, not too far from you, out there in Schaumburg off I-90. And
Mhm.
I'm like, Lord, if this doesn't turn around this week, I'm going to move on because I can no longer drive myself crazy. And for me, it's like I've done this. I'm this person. I'm all this, all these accolades and these credentials. And I'm like, and here I am, Father, in your forest, literally driving myself crazy. And so, having that understanding, it takes a great amount of faith. And we use that word faith a lot, you know, but what does it actually take when you're in the middle of a fire of that magnitude? You talked about, you lost your bestie, your grandmama, and the same sequence of events. There's this, and then there's the housing, and then there's, those are the four basic things in psychology that would drive someone to not just want to exist anymore, because you're talking about economics, you're talking about your family's been broken, you have the kids that you have to be strong for, and this word of faith means so much. The value, where did you find the value in the middle of the fire?
Yeah. The thing that I, I most resisted in my flesh was the thing I most needed. And I would say the way that I survived is I had to die. This for me was a death. It was a death of my life as I knew it. It was a death of every dream that I had, prophetic words that had been spoken over me. And in fact, I actually had a vision, an encounter with Jesus, in which he gave me a choice. And in this dream, vision, like I'm awake, but it's like a dream. It's super vivid, like a movie in my head, but I'm awake. And in this vision, Jesus comes to me, and I'm standing in a graveyard, and I'm just walking around and reading all the headstones. And they have really specific things. Like I wanted to homeschool my children. So one of them said, homeschooling your children. Okay, I'm thinking I'm a single mom. Now I'm going to have to work like crazy. So that dream, dead. Prophetic words spoken over our family, dead. I just saw every promise, goal, future aspiration as a gravestone, dead. The biggest gravestone in the middle of it all had my name on it. And Jesus came up to me and he said, like, it's okay to grieve. In fact, you need to. This is what you do in a graveyard. And death of your life as you know it is happening.
Mm-hmm.
But the graveyard is the best soil for new life. This graveyard can become a garden if you will allow yourself to fully die in this place. The very place you die will become the very ground in which new life will be planted and you will live. And it will be different than before. Because I had grown up like just wanting to be a good Christian, studying. I went to school. I got, this degree, this training, that training. I had so much Bible in my head. I could write a amazing thesis. You ask me any biblical question, I could write you a thesis. But in that moment, none of it meant anything. I said, Jesus, I just need you, the person of you. Like, or I do die here. Like, this is too hard, like on my flesh, on my humanity.
Right.
And so Jesus said, you have to make a choice. I will walk you through this, but you have to be 100% in. Welcome, Jenna, to the first time in your life that you've come to the end of yourself and you realize that you can't fix this. And so I died. And because I died, I graduated into this whole new way of doing life where it was faith now in Christ and what he could do, not what I could do. And everything changed for me in that moment when I said, yes, I'm all in your way. There's no plan B.
Trial by fire. I'm listening to you and I recognize the purging. and then the fire building, it destroys to have something that God can actually now he can work with this. And I resonated with you just listening to what you're saying, having all the theology and having all the book, and if there's any more room and space in their brain, it's like, but he's like, no, I just need that relationship. And I hope you guys caught that she said, she called out for, I just need you. I need you, Jesus. Everything else hadn't sustained me up until this moment, but I think that was beautiful what you said. There's that relationship and being in that naked state that you are in the fire being tried. It's like that diamond, everything had to be broken off. Even, you talked about the prophetic words, the revelations, they came to nothing. And she had to ask for Jesus. Having all the credentials that you have, she had to ask for Jesus. Looking back on your life, looking back on from that period of time before that, knowing what you know now, how has, where's the balance in that? I know you talked about maybe the word is Jesus, giving up everything, dying to self. I like how I just enjoyed that moment there. The balance, looking back on your life, what's the things you know now, the things you know now, what do you wish you knew then?
Gosh, I wish I had understood the simplicity of the gospel.
Yeah.
I pursued knowledge so hard, and I filled my mind with so much. And, I grew up going to church and just seeking. I was a seeker of knowledge and wisdom. I prayed a prayer in my 20s. I said, I want to have more wisdom than anyone else that's ever existed. I don't know if it's possible to have more than Solomon, because I think he gets to be first in that category. But after him, I want to have wisdom. And I didn't realize that when I prayed that prayer, I was destroying every dream I thought I wanted for myself. Because in order to give me wisdom, I had to walk through the process of unlearning everything that had mixture. And it could not be unlearned without destruction. Like for me, for my path, I feel like that destruction was necessary, because you can't do mixture when it comes to God. You can't say, well, this is my understanding of your word. Well, this is my understanding of your will. Proverbs 3:5 became huge for me in that time. Do not lean on your own understanding. Acknowledge me in all of my ways, and I will make your path straight. Well, I grew up, wanting to be this strong woman, this world changer. And I'm like, I'm going to have a good path for my life. And God, don't worry. I'm going to be faithful to create it and give you the glory. Like, I thought I was doing the right Christian thing by working hard to create a path that would show people God is good and he's this and he's that. And God is like, I didn't ask you to create your own path.
Right.
There's a simplicity that I totally missed in all of the academic head knowledge, trying to gain and learn. It was like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which distracted me away from the tree of life.
That's beautiful right there. Gosh, there's so many run after that tree of knowledge. And it's like, that is, that's it. That's the gem in the garden. It's like, no, the tree of life is life. And life abundantly is in the existence of that. Man, this is awesome. This is really awesome. So that sounds like that was another bridge to your life, like the fork in the road that, we come to, and we have to choose death, or do we choose life? And you said, I'm choosing life. And you talked about the mixture. And I think of that from the culture aspect. And so many want to bring their culture into the kingdom. And Father's like, my culture can't exist with your culture. It doesn't work that way for many. How have you been improving the quality of your life from that fork in the road?
It's so funny because, like, someone on the outside observing and looking in, like, some people probably actually think the quality of my life has decreased significantly because I no longer have the big house and the fancy job, and just the things that appeared like success to the outside. Um, but if you're looking with spiritual eyes, then you can definitely see how much has been gained. And I would say that the quality of my life has improved because I don't carry these ginormous heavy burdens that I used to carry. It's like I would take God at his promise, but then I would forsake the process and not rely on his power because the mixture um, stopped me from letting his power flow into me. So it's not as hard. It's not as hard. It's harder in one way that I just can't go fix it the way I used to try to just fix it. Like the human nature wants to know, control, fix, and do. And a lot of times now it's waiting. It's giving up my right to understand. It's like, I don't know how you're going to do this. I don't even know what you're doing next. I just know that you're doing something and I'm going to wait on you. And so I don't have to figure out a million things. When I was going through what I was going through, the Holy Spirit gave me very specific strategies of wisdom to get me through. And one of the things he said was, you don't have to understand what's happening around you because you don't. When your life is transitioning that much and you're not sleeping and you're in some kind of a trauma response, you don't understand what's happening. You're just in the middle of all this chaos. And God said, don't try to understand because I know that's like your default. Just hear my voice and obey. And I was like, oh my gosh, that verse that I always hated. I mean, you shouldn't hate a verse in the Bible, but I did. The one that says, come to me, all who are weary and heavy burden, and I will give you rest. And I didn't like that verse because I thought, I've never experienced this and I want to, and I don't know how, because my life is a constant burden, because I was constantly trying to fulfill God's promises and the work of his kingdom and my own understanding and my own effort. So when my life collapsed, all of that self-effort and striving collapsed with it. It's like that hamster wheel, the Christian hamster wheel collapsed with everything else. And I felt free for the first time. And now I can just ask God something and then do what he says, whether I understand it or not. I still seek understanding, but it's just lifted so many burdens off of me feeling like I have to somehow take God's role in all of the orchestrating. I don't. And I've lived off of miracles now since 2019. I've always wanted to experience miracles, wondering why don't they happen in my life? Well, because I was taking care of myself enough where I was never like needed a miracle because I just was like, I'll provide for myself, and then I don't need your miracles, God. So in that desperation, I just learned how to depend on him like a little girl depends on a father who can be trusted. So now I get to experience what it looks like when he takes care of all the things that he's always wanted to take care of in my life, and I never knew.
What you just said, me being a male, you just said a little girl. Can you say that again? Taken care by her father. Say that again.
Yeah, I get to just be like his little girl now and trust my father to take care of me. And I don't have to understand how he's going to do it. I just know that he will. So he carries the burden.
Right.
And I get to have now room and capacity to carry the blessing because that burden is not in the way anymore.
Right. Sounds like when Prophet John let me know John the Baptist had to decrease in his intellect, in his position, in his servanthood. And he said, I must decrease. But he never, or it's never recorded for us, the method of how he decreased. It's more we look at it from the humility aspect. And I just like how you say that. And you guys listening, this is not a Debbie Downer. This is profoundly deconstructing and then rebuilding off a foundation. Jenna, who inspires you? Because to be who you are, there's got to be some great inspiration sources, people, influencers in your life. Who inspires you?
Yeah. It changes depending on the season, but
Yep.
currently, I would say Dietrich Bonhoeffer is my current inspiration. I just watched a documentary about him, and what I love so much is that I guess I feel like I can relate to him, where he did that exchange of religion
Yes.
and church for um, relationship and having the courage to take action. And it's not the popular thing. It's, people are like, oh, make peace. No, be a peacemaker. But when you choose God, when you're on one side and you're not on the fence, there's gonna be an opposition.
Yeah.
There's always going to be an opposition, and we are supposed to be opposing the opposition. And I don't mean people, I mean in the spirit realm, there's evil. We're supposed to hate evil, love the sinners, love the enemies, but hate evil. And when you're straddling the fence, and religion does that because it's afraid and it people pleases, you can't oppose evil. You're not for anything really. You're in that place of mixture. So if I'm going to be for God, I have to be against evil. And Bonhoeffer was willing to take action to say, no one's doing anything. Like, here's Hitler, and Germany is changing before our eyes, and people were starting to wake up in the church to the reality of what was happening. And so many people, for whatever reason, were not willing to take action, and he was, and it cost him his life. And I want the kind of faith. I'm not saying that I want to be a martyr, but I want to have the kind of faith where I'm willing to die if necessary, because I want to be all in. I don't want my life to just be to build this kingdom, this earthly kingdom on this life. And I don't know, the next life is where it's at anyway. So let this one count for something. Let it count for something. And his life counted for something. I want mine to count for something.
See, guys, it doesn't have to take a lot when we're dealing with our influencers and how we build off of just their stories and how they walked. And there are a bunch of generals that have gone before all of us here. So don't make this harder than what it really is. And you talked about, Jenna, earlier, simplicity. And in so many, in my travels, they make this walk much complicated than it truly has to be. And sometimes Father has to just bring all that down so that we can realize that if we just trust and believe in every step, in every breath, because I'm telling you, when you're in a crisis, and Jenna, you can talk to this too, when you're in a crisis, it almost gets down to that breath. Depending on the level of the crisis. I mean, when you're in the fire and it is, it's raging, and it's like, if I move, I'm scorched. If I take enough breath, I'm getting punched in the middle of the breath. And you talked about the babies, and it's got to be that much. It has to be challenging to be able to navigate life with those who are trusting you in the middle of it. So don't lose heart, you guys. I want you to really take one piece. If there's one piece, because Jenna's sharing a lot here. This is like, I got some zingers. This is kind of cool. She's sharing a lot. And if there's one thing that you hear, lock onto that, and let that take root in you. And we're going to segue into the next session here of the segment here. Jenna, what do you like most about you?
About me,
What do you like most about you?
Yeah, I think I just like the pioneering part of me where I'm willing to push past status quo and say, but do we have to do it this way? Like, God's really big. He has no limits. So can we dream bigger? Like, can we punch through those ceilings? Actually, can we just get out of the box altogether? Like, let's not even be in the building. Like, let's go out there and let's just build God's way. Like, we don't even have to reform the stuff that's messed up here. Like, I want to do what God did in me. He took me apart so he could rebuild me. And so that pioneering spirit now, what God did in me, he wants to do through me. And so there's just this kind of creative piece of that. It requires much faith, but the simplicity piece of that as well. So I just love, I guess I feel like I'm a parable. It's like what God did in me was, I can't even, I'm a writer and I can't even tell you the words to explain actually what he did in these last several years. But now he wants to do it through me. And I think that is so exciting to know that it's not just my life that he wants to rebuild. It's the lives of many. It's institutions, it's systems. So I like to be, that I get to be a part of that.
This is fun. If I were to walk with you, it's like, walking down Michigan Avenue, looking at all those massive buildings, and not just a massive building, but there's history under the buildings. That's kind of like this conversation. You talk about pioneering, and I want to talk about what we want to talk about, the micro school. What is a micro school?
Yeah. So a micro school, like the simple definition is where you have more than two families coming together regularly, using the same curriculum and doing school together. So that's kind of like big picture definition of micro school. Now that can show up in many different expressions of what a micro school looks like. So for me, in the micro school that I am at this year, that looks like 12 students that show up Monday through Friday, 9 to 3. So we're just like a regular school day. So think of like a private school. They're coming to school. We have a classroom. They're there all day. I'm teaching them. But what makes it unique is that we're multi-age. And so I have kindergarten through 5th grade all in one. And it's not a classroom. I call it a learning studio because we have a lot of different learning spaces, set up more like a co-working studio, honestly. And so our multi-age class, now this is where we are kind of like a private school, but kind of like a homeschool. We're like a family. Okay, we're multi-age, we're like a big family. And we individualize the learning for each of the students based on not just where they're at in a grade level academically, but based on who they are. Like, who did God make this child to be? And what did he make this child to do? Like, what's their purpose? What's their passion? So we help students understand, who is God? Who are you? What did he make you to do? And so all of the learning that they do now has context and purpose. It's not just, I'll finish a workbook because my teacher said so I can go on to the next grade level. It's doing education God's way. And so it's more like discipleship of the whole child, not just trying to teach the mind some academics. That's our school.
Now, can this be also virtual as well?
It could be. I know some people that do it that way. I think it's best in person because it's hard to substitute what they're going to get in their relationship with teachers and with peers in a virtual setting. So it's possible, but I would not recommend it.
Why did you start, or why did you get involved with the micros? What was the genesis of you saying this has got to change? I know the pioneering spirit, but why did you start and get involved in the micro school? What was the change?
Yeah. There's some layers of history behind this answer. So I worked in public education. I went to school to be a teacher, and I worked in both public and private school, as well as working with at-risk students in summer programs as a tutor. And also I worked for educational publishing companies, creating curriculum and assessment. So I've been deeply involved in education. And I remember even before I was a parent saying, I don't think I want to put my children in this system. Because although there's some good pieces of it and there are some great teachers, I realized that the way the system itself is designed is anti-kingdom.
Mhm.
It's not designed around discipleship and the values of the kingdom.
Right.
And so I was always looking for a solution. And so in my mind, I thought homeschool. That has to be the solution. But going back to my story, the gravestones, what died the dream of homeschooling, because now I'm a single mom. I have to work. And how can I possibly homeschool my children while also working full time? So that's the background context. And it's really fun because one of the things God told me, Jesus told me when I was in that graveyard and everything had to die, he reminded me of the rebirthing
Mm-hmm.
was getting to experience those promises that had died, but in a new way. So God said, don't worry about not being able to homeschool. That desire I put in your heart to educate your children differently, it will come to pass. It'll just be different than you think. So I didn't have a grid for micro schools at that time. So he could not have really explained it to me. But when I found micro schools, I remembered that promise from him and said, oh my gosh, this is that. So the way that I actually found it was my daughter was really struggling in school. We had an opportunity to send her to a great private school, a private Christian school. We got a scholarship and she was in first grade, but she was losing who she is. Like she's a happy, bubbly little girl. And she began to just get sad and stressed to the point where she would start having panic attacks at night. It's
Really?
like, I don't want to go to school in the morning. I don't want to go to school. The pacing was just too fast for her. She was losing confidence. She couldn't read as quickly as her friends, and she was just shutting down. And my mama spirit was like, this is an emergency. Like,
Right.
I can't believe this is happening. I didn't expect this in a good private school. It's like, it's shutting my daughter down. It's destroying her. I got to get her out of here, but I need to make money. What am I going to do? And I just happened to see, by no coincidence, a Facebook post of a mom who I had actually taught her son kindergarten in a private school like 15 years prior. Her post pops up saying, I'm looking for a teacher for a micro school. And in my spirit, I knew I was supposed to call her. And so I learned from her what a micro school was because she was running one. God told her to open a micro school. And so she did. And she needed a teacher. And so I said, I think I'm supposed to be your teacher. And it was part-time. There was no funding at the time. So this was a leap of faith because I had to quit a decent paying job that I was working at the time to go teach part-time at a micro school, not knowing how I would get paid, but I knew my daughter needed to be there. So that's how I first was introduced to the micro school. And when I saw what it did for my daughter, it saved her. I feel like it saved her life. I really do. Because we could slow down and we could address the healing in her heart that she needed. And we just spent a whole year on that before we even focus on the academics again. So after going through that year with her, this director, this founder, God was telling her to step out so she could help more people open micro schools, and he simultaneously was speaking to me. Now you step in, you be the director, which is of course another story of crazy faith.
I love his transitions. I mean, you can just see his blueprint just in that.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's underlining blueprints of transition. He's saying, I'm going to shift and make some things behind the scene. And it's like, I look at it as like driving on the highway at like 75 and you merge and I get on 290 going into the city and then you get on 294, just all these mergings and you're at your destination. That was back in the original changeover from what you wanted to become. It's like really kind of cool. And yeah, you saved your daughter. And because we homeschool our last of the six. And then she's now in a accelerated system. And it's like the school system that we came out of. I came out of a public school. It's not the one shoe size fits everyone. It's like, oh, this is much bigger than where my child is at. And you recognize, and like the strength that's needed there, the persistence, the observation of your child, for one, to know that something is off. And if I continue doing the same old, it's going to remain off. And, you got a whole other category of life you got to walk down. But you're aware. You're aware. And that the system wasn't working, obviously, for your family, for the dynamics of your family. And so you took control of that. And that's really kind of cool because now, the microsystem approach, the homeschooling approach are not one and the same. Every child is not the same as the 24 in the classrooms, and that burdens on the teacher. And then, so many gets lost from me listening to. Our daughter, she's 15. It's like there are so many kids that are maybe lost in the shuffle of the system, and the system's always shuffling because you got to make sure you meet the quarter goals, and you got to make sure you get your finals in, and winter finals, summer finals in. You're off to the next system. How important is the micro school to the education system? I believe it's important.
I mean, I really think this is revolutionary, and it's not seeking to reform the existing system.
Right.
And this is a thing that God has done with me ever since the graveyard becoming a garden. I used to want to reform what already existed.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried. I actually tried during one of my years teaching, and it didn't work so well. God said, don't try to reform that because it's man-made. Yeah. And the philosophy and the system, it's all man-made. And again, can there be some good people in there? Can there be some good fruit? Yes. But the system itself is man-made. It's not of the kingdom. And so God said, this micro school idea is very important because there's nothing more precious to him than what he calls treasure. Like, you want to know what God treasures? He's explicit about it in the Bible. Children are a treasure. Yeah. And our children have been in these increasingly dark places where they're spending so much of their day with these increasingly dark agendas that have been, sneaking their way in. I think COVID was a wake-up call for a lot of parents, seeing on the screen during e-learning, like, wait, what's happening in school? Wait, what's the curriculum? What is my child learning? Mm-hmm. A big wake-up call. So the micro schools are an important place to be a safe place for children who their parents say, I don't want them in public school, but for whatever reason, I cannot homeschool. Like, we are not in competition with homeschool. If parents can homeschool, we say go for it. Like, awesome. Right. Like, we're not trying to take that away. That's a beautiful thing. But we call them public school refugees. So during COVID, they decided they want to exit the public school, and they've tried homeschooling, but for one reason or another, it's not working, or right. So they need a safe place to go. And private school is not a good option for a lot of people for a few different reasons. One is cost. Micro schools keep costs down. They're much more affordable than private schools, and I can tell you why in a moment. But also, even a lot of your private schools are still modeled after the public education system. Their philosophies are the same. They just happen to add some biblical curriculum and maybe chapel once a week. So they're still not teaching children per a discipleship model biblically, if you were to really dig into scripture of what is God's design for how to raise up children and train them in the way that they should go. So this provides a safe place for them where they will belong. A lot of the kids that have come to us were having issues with bullies, anxiety, depression, feeling overwhelmed, not feeling loved, feeling lost, falling between the cracks.
Yes.
There's a million reasons. And because we focus on the individual, we can see exactly what this child needs based on who God says they are. And we can go into all of those cracks and start fixing the foundation. We're not going to just move them forward because, oh, it's October, now it's November, we got to move you forward. No, we're going to address all of these pieces that you've been missing, that you need in your foundation, so that we can build. You can't build a house on sand, right? And that's what is happening in the education system. Unfortunately, for a lot of children, they grow up thinking, look at my house, it's great. And then they go into their first hard thing in life and it collapses.
Yeah. And I was hoping that was going to happen. Sorry about that, everybody. You talk about the mass exodus, and over the past months, and I could really see how the plague accelerated that exodus. And it was like, because we've been homeschooling, and when I say for us homeschooling, I was teaching history. Jill was teaching because we have a teaching background. But this mass exodus between 20 and 22, and micro schooling, everyone, is not an alternative school per se, in that understanding what an alternative school is, that we place name tags on. Like, those are for the worst of the worst, and because they can't just get along and have community with schooling. So I want you to understand, we're not having this conversation bashing the school system. What we're talking about is an alternative and a new approach. And I like the fact that you mentioned the cracks. I'm thinking about even my life going through public school, and when I was going through domestic abuse in my family. I'm just being in the cracks and putting on that facade like everything's great, everything's cool, and you're going to excel in sports and blah, blah, blah. But then there's still those cracks that you are never addressing. And then those cracks become fault lines and the triggers that happen in society and community, especially our communities. So your approach to helping children who are 1 foot in the crack, or maybe they're in the crack, and you can address those needs. I think that's really honorable, but more so needed. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's really, really needed when you look at the dynamics of kids now. And we talked to our 15-year-old, and our alma mater, they have an hour of emotional. I don't know what it's really called, but they spend an hour, part of the curriculum, where they just talk about emotions, or they're not doing work. And if they're overwhelmed at school, they jump into this class and they just deal with that. And so it's like, are we doing a disservice?
Yeah. And I want to just speak to the idea of emotion for a moment, because if you look at the way that God deals with us, it's not just like, what do you know? Like our motto with the kids, they will know if I ask them, how do you show the love of Jesus? Or how do you interact with scripture? It's head, heart, hand. We say, like, what you know matters. Okay. We're going to work on what is in this brain of yours because you're going to be renewed, transformed by the renewing of your mind. But of course, if you look into the Hebraic concept of mind, we know that also connects to heart.
Yes.
And so, heart, like what's happening in your heart? Are you just going to know the word of God like it's some abstract thing sitting on the other side of the room? Or is your heart going to have relationship with God? Are you going to do the right thing because it's the right behavior and you don't want to get in trouble? Or is your heart going to be transformed to where you're going to let God's love flow through you, and what God does in you, he can do through you? And then hand, are you going to know, and maybe you'll feel or respond, but do nothing to build the kingdom, to transform the landscapes of darkness into landscapes of light? So we disciple the whole child. We train the whole child, head, heart, and hand. And we can slow it down. We can stop. Like we've had days where, on my lesson plan is, okay, 1:30, read aloud time. And I say, nope, 1:30, family meeting. What just happened at lunch? There was all these little conflicts. And kids are not born knowing how to work through conflict or how to identify their really big, strong feelings. And so we're teaching them these skills of conflict resolution and naming my emotions and these things that unfortunately people don't start dealing with a lot of times until, I don't know, maybe they're in their teens or a young adult and they see a counselor because they've never learned these skills. And so we're teaching the students the skills of like being in relationship with people. That's really important.
This is fun. I hope you're having fun.
I'm having fun.
This is fun. We're addressing community. And all this ties together, you guys. What about to those who sit and may have this question, what about the education piece? What about the education piece? We're talking about, H cubed. We're talking about our emotions and our child, but are they getting educated?
Yeah.
What can you say to those who has that question?
Yeah. I would first use the example again of like, what does education even mean? Like, what does it mean to be educated? Because if to be educated is defined as per the public education system, and it says, oh, I went through a curriculum, I took a test, I memorized the thing, I'm educated. Are you? Like, what value does that have? And so we want students to be educated in a way, again, holistically, where there's real life value that impacts who they are and what they're able to do long-term sustainable. I don't want my kids to study for a test to get an A when they don't even know what they're learning or why they're learning it. Right. It's not useful otherwise. Right. And so we are dealing with the character issue in the heart alongside the head. And I always, make funny examples with the kids. What happens if you think that the kind thing to do is to ignore people and walk away from them, but you in your heart you think it's kind, and your hands are doing the action, and so you think the kind thing is whenever you see someone you turn around and walk the other way. What piece are you missing? We play this game. Head, right. You don't know the right thing to do. And so we always talk about how all three of these are necessary, and many systems just focus on the tree of knowledge of good and evil. What are you putting into your mind? And it needs to be anchored to something. You need to anchor it to identity and purpose. So who is God? Who are you in relation to God? Which must be answered so you know who you are in relation to others and who you are in relation to your purpose. Because now there's context, purpose, and meaning to everything you do. So we don't even do grades at my micro school. So my students are not saying, I need to get an A. They're not distracted. I'm not saying grades are horrible. If you want to do them, that's fine. In high school, we would do grades. But for our elementary students,
Okay.
we don't want them to be distracted with what abstract letter am I getting? It's like, what are you learning? Why are you learning it? Why is it important? And now let me give you a hands-on activity to demonstrate that learning so that there's a purpose to it. I don't care what you get on a test if all you can do is take tests. Even if you get good grades, what are you going to do with your life? How are you going to fulfill God's will for your life if you can only get through tests?
It sounds like, the students can come in and engage, and it helps them achieve back if they choose to go back into a school system. Is what it sounds like. And the high school aspect, the teaching aspect, is there so that they can be accountable, and rather they want to go to higher levels of academia. You have that capability as well for those age groups, correct?
Well, yeah, and they're actually performing better because we're teaching, again, these foundational things that are missing. Independence and self-government, for example. When my students came to me at the beginning of the year, if I wanted them to work on something independently where they just had to, read directions, figure something out, they were lost. They didn't know what to do unless someone told them exactly what to do, exactly how to do it, exactly where to sit. Like they were like little robot. It's like the what is it? The Industrial Revolution, kid style. Like they don't know what to do unless you
Right.
put the factory settings in place for them. I want them to have critical thinking. So now it's
Right.
amazing because I can put a whole list of things up on the board and I've taught them how to prioritize. Do you need more time in math today or do you need more time in language arts? Where do you have gaps? And they have become partakers in the decision process, and taking ownership over their own education. And they understand why they're learning, how to learn, how to think, and how to have that self-government. So when they go on, if they went back into the school system or into college, they're going to have that skill set,
Right.
that they know how to learn. If they know how to learn, they can learn anything. If I'm always telling them what to know, they may never actually learn how to learn.
I'm telling you guys, this is no joke. And I love, Jenna, honestly, I love the fact how you look at this at a different approach. I honestly say that because there needs to be, and I was watching Dr. Phil, and he was doing an episode on this. I don't know if you caught it last month. He was talking about the education and the system and the cracks in the system, which is not allowing for the holistic approach. And there's not this one size that fits all in children. I'm sorry, it's never going to work. You'll have your levels in each of the grade systems because that's just, I'm not going to learn at your capacity. You're not going to learn at my capacity. We're not just that we're not robot made. And so this maybe it's not even really titled as framing up as a new approach. Maybe it's Father's original approach. Maybe by design, this is cultivating. Study the Greeks and their way of learning and the Hebraic way of learning. It is very true. 1 + 3 + 6 is going to be 1 + 3 + 6 + 9. It just keeps going around. It's not 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. It's an addition. It's not as cyclical as we frame it up to be. And so cultivating the head, the heart, and the hands, and addressing it and taking the time. And you mentioned, wait a minute, something occurred at lunchtime. We need to handle that before we continue on in this approach to further the education. So much there, guys. So much there. Jenna, do you have space and room for more?
Yes.
How can people reach out to you regarding this micro school? How can they reach out to you and help in some aspect? And I want you guys to pay attention to this last segment, what we're talking about here. How can they connect on this and help this micro school, this microcosm, expand and help you with the vision? How can they do that?
Yeah. So right now, the easiest way to reach me is just going to be my personal email,
Okay.
which is going to be Jenna.ditsch, it's DITSCH, @gmail.com. I do have a website that's going under total reconstruction in true form, just like the rest of my life. But that's jennaditch.com. So if you want to bookmark that, you'll see some changes coming soon to that site. So those would be the two best ways to reach me right now.
You know, it's doable. Vision expands as people are applied to the vision. It's like everyone watching, you have a piece to the vision. You get to become a builder. And just not just, you know, there's so many visions out there. You know, so you can choose your pick at a buffet, right? But when we're talking about this generation and the next generation coming up until Yeshua's return, yeah, you could argue, is it a lost generation? You could argue a lot of things. But how could you best support a vision that's driving to create wholeness, to bring others into that approach that you're working in? That's just different. It's different from the systems in place.
Yeah. And you have to think generationally. I mean, if you look at the way the enemy thinks, it's the long game. I won't get into it now, but if you want some interesting homework to do, okay, I'm a teacher, I'll give you homework. Study the foundations, even of education itself, and look at the influences on the education system. And you're going to find some remarkable similarities to the ideas found in socialism at the foundations of our education system. And if you want to look, for example, let's go back to Hitler and these regimes who wanted to have power, control, and dominance. Look at what they did when it came to their ideas about youth and education. They were thinking, if I want the end goal of 20 years, 50 years, 100 years from now, we want this, then that's going to start with those who are the students, the children right now. And so we need to be kingdom thinking. What plans does God have for his kingdom to be built on the earth? And how can we start building that now by building a strong foundation and planting seeds in our youth who will become that? It's not that I'm going to probably see in my own lifetime the visions that God has given me. He's given me blueprints and visions of things that need to be in order for the kingdom to come and the will of the Father to be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I got frustrated for a time and said, God, I don't think anyone's ready for this. Like, it's hard for me to find adults that are ready to do what you've shown me you want done. And he said, you're focused on the wrong audience. You need to work in a school. You need to open a school. You need to prepare the children to be the kind of kingdom people who will grow up where, your ceiling is their floor. And then they are going to hold the capacity, and they're going to have the character and the experience, and they'll be developed fully and wholly in wisdom, so that they can actually be the ones who build those blueprints that right now your generation isn't ready to build, but the next one will be.
That's a challenge. Studying the foundation of education. I'm telling you, you're going to see something really crazy. It's going to change your whole worldview on education, you guys. Closing up this next final segment with Jenna Ditsch. You're listening to Jenna Ditsch and myself on Night Moods. Fascinating conversation. I must say, when we put the description together, it was like, oh, this is kind of riveting. And then you're like, okay, Father, this is what we put out there. How are we going to meet this standard? I think we broke the ceiling on this one. This is really kind of interesting, you guys, because the dynamics are changing. And when you understand, and go back and replay. I want you guys to go back and replay. Take the challenge, learn. I'm going to put that out there, you guys. So we're going to make that a challenge for this next week. I want you, for those of you that take the challenge of learning about the foundation of the education system. If you take the challenge, send a summary to nightmoodshdq@gmail.com. We got a free gift for you from one of our friends, our partners. I'll show you a free gift in a second here. Extreme Devotion. We're going to give you a 365-page book, a devotional book from one of our partners. If you take this challenge, now, the honor system is at play right now. I didn't love the challenge. Jenna loved the challenge. And you know how we roll. We always put a challenge in each of the episodes. So take this challenge. If you submit a summary, I don't know, we have to talk about this, how they're going to submit the summary. Send an email over to nightmoodshdq@gmail.com and or to Jenna's email. Matter of fact, send to Jenna's email as well. Because we want to know what you have learned, and then we want to make sure. And now this applies to if you're in the United States. There's a free gift. I'll share the book here. Unplanned, you guys. Unplanned. Here's the book. Extreme Devotion from our partners at Voice of the Martyrs. You'll get this book. Take the challenge. Summary of the foundation of the educational system. I'm telling you, when I learned this myself, I was like, oh, Jenna, I'm done. Jill and I were like, okay, we're doing something different. She's the last of the 5 of the 6. It's going to be different. Jenna, before we get into the rapid fire, I like my one-liners. It's kind of cool. I got a bunch here. Before we get in the rapid fire, you guys, I want to go go a little bit deeper, Jenna, here. 3 segments. I hope you're getting a lot, guys. I'm getting a lot. This is kind of fun for me. What's your purpose this year? And how's it different from years past, Jenna?
Yeah. This is a learning year for me. In the past, I spent a lot of time writing down ideas, blueprints, visions. I'm a visionary. That's really fun. I love it. And then when you do it and you try to build the idea, this is different. Yeah. So I, taught at a micro school last year. That was great. And I learned some stuff. But this year, being the director and also thinking about taking the next parts of the vision that God has given me for education, and in real life, in real time, with all the challenges that come with educating children and running a business, we're trying to look at what's working well and what's not working well, because we need to tweak things so that we can grow the vision from year 1 to year 2. Like every year we should be improving. So fundraising is one part of that, because visions cost money. Again, when you're writing down all the ideas on paper, it's like, this is cool. And when you're like, I need a facility and I need this much space and I need these, tablets. So looking for creative ways to communicate with people what we're doing, why it's important, looking to build partnerships so we can get the funding to build the next levels of this and to expand. The students that I have right now, I love so much. And this is 100% what they need. But there's so many other students out there that need this. And so we want to not only grow our school, but we want to grow micro schools like across the nation, actually in other countries as well. We want to take this idea and we want to help other people launch micro schools as well. So it just went from I'm a teacher to what does God want to do across the globe when it comes to micro schools?
Massive vision. Nice question. What drives you? And who drives you?
Well, Jesus is the driver of my automobile. Honestly, that verse that talks about we're going to stand one day before Christ for this judgment. And I want him to say, well done, good and faithful servant. I'm going to have no excuses. Like there'll be nothing that I can say to say, well, God, the reason I didn't start the school is because I'm a single mom. And, like I could think of lots of excuses that the world would say that's a good reason not to do this or not to do that. But it's not going to fly with Jesus. So I really want him to say, well done. So if I make him happy, then I've succeeded. And that's what drives me.
And I believe that's going to work for you. It's already a manifestation. You're good. Just keep doing what you're doing. Last question before we get into rapid fire with Jenna Ditsch here on Night Moods here in the lab with yours truly. I know I've sent this over to you, but they don't know. They don't know. Being a woman of faith, what does that mean to you?
Mm-hmm. A woman of faith means that I myself am head, heart, hand. In my past life, before it collapsed, I had a lot of head knowledge. Mm-hmm. And so faith without works is dead. Yeah. But it can't be my own works. So for me, a woman of faith means pursuing God's purpose and his vision, but his way and per his process. Because otherwise, my faith is just my own works, which are filthy rags, which accomplish nothing. So I don't think I can have faith just by doing something bold or being risky. Yeah. I have to put my faith in Jesus, which means I have to have such an intimate relationship with him that I hear and obey. And so it's obedience.
You said his process. That stands out. You said his process. And that's a challenge for many who really don't want to do his process, but want Father to bless what you're doing. Yeah. This has been kind of profound, this conversation. When Constance said riveting, I'm like, okay, I got to meet that measure. This is really kind of cool. Thank you for joining us in the lab here, Jenna. I want to have you back on for more because I believe we're just touching the first of many levels because you guys, full disclaimer, she's more spiritual than she's leading on, and this is really kind of cool. This is really kind of cool. And you can help so many other women and just others, even males in this generation. Hot topics, rapid fire before we end the show this evening here on Night Moods. Hope you enjoyed this episode, you guys. Send your email to nightmoodshdq@gmail.com, or those watching the live show, we're doing the rebroadcast. Will probably come out Tuesday this afternoon for those you'll catch the podcast coming out. Let us know your heart. Let us know what you're thinking. Do you have any questions? Because I want to pass these questions on to Jenna regarding each of the segments here. So send your questions to nightmoodshdq@gmail.com. Coffee. You said you're a connoisseur. What's your best and what's your favorite coffee?
My favorite coffee is a French vanilla cappuccino.
Say it again, you broke up.
French vanilla cappuccino.
French vanilla cappuccino. Okay. Are you all in?
Yes.
Rapid fire here with Jenna Ditsch here. How are you and Asher doing?
Well, if it has to be a rapid answer, I'm going to say good under fire.
Hence the title, Good Under Fire. Last rapid fire question. Favorite sports team?
Oh, I don't watch sports.
There you go. That's it. She doesn't watch sports. I don't have an applause factor to end the show with Jenna. She's another non-sports nut because she, my friends, has a vision that she is after. Jenna, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate you taking your time to come into the lab experience and get to share your story with me.
Thank you, Michael. The pleasure has been mine. And yeah, if people have questions again about micro school or anything else, we shared my email earlier, jenna.ditch@gmail.com. So I'd be happy to answer questions.
Send your questions in to Miss Jenna. She'll make sure she gets the answer for you and also support everything that this woman of God is doing. You guys, I believe in what she's doing. And there are more doors that are going to be opening up to you in this season as you transition into director and speaking more and teaching more, because as you know, the generation needs truth and 100% truth. And I know that he is pouring that into you as we speak. You guys join me for the next episode here on Night Moods. Stay tuned. Glad you're with me in the lab. I'll talk to you guys real soon. Take care. That was phenomenal. Thank you so much.